Thank you for bringing me some coffee. And you, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Nice to see you in person.
You guys ready to vote?
All right, let's do it.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the regular meeting of the City Council of the City of Universal City, Texas. Wow, it is Tuesday, August 1st, 2023. It's 6:30 p.m. and I'll call this meeting to order now and call for a quorum check, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Goolsby.
Here.
Councilmember Buck.
Here.
Councilmember Bulman. Here. Councilmember Fitzpatrick. Here. Councilmember Najarian.
Here.
Councilmember Vaughan.
Here.
A quorum is present. We shall proceed. The invocation this evening will be given by Councilwoman Fitzpatrick, and I'll lead us in the pledges afterwards, so that everyone please stand.
Heavenly Father, I pray that we will have a productive meeting this evening. I pray that we will be able to discuss the important things we need to address and that we will be efficient in handling each of these topics. I also pray that you give us the grace to work together to come up with the best possible solution that will most benefit the people we are elected to represent. Please keep all safe, but especially look over our military and first responders. And I wouldn't be mad at some rain. We ask all this in your name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I pledge allegiance.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
I get so excited about what's happening in Texas. As you can see, we have a terrific audience here this evening, and there's a couple of special reasons that I'll be covering in a minute. I really welcome everybody coming to our council meeting, especially as hot as it is on the 1st of August. So I would like to ask a couple of young people to come forward, please. And Mr. Fitzpatrick, would you go down and join them, please? I would like to call for Mr. Preston Poronsky, Julia Tennis, Parker Tennis. See these young lads? Let me tell you something about them. Last year they were here at about this same time, and they presented a check to us for the Parks Partners program. All right? Pretty cool, huh? Really nice. They had a lemonade stand, and the proceeds from that lemonade stand went to Parks Partners. They did it again this year. Not for Parks Partners this time, though. It was for our animal care control facility and homes for the homeless. And so I asked Councilwoman Fitzpatrick to be there and work with the young children, and if she wants to say anything else, we can. But I would like to have a great round of applause for these young men and women here. You guys want to tell us how much you raised?
We raised $102.
That is wonderful. Congratulations, you guys. You are, boy, you're the future of our city. We're so proud to have you in our community that, we're just tickled. Christina, do you have something you want to add?
I just want to say we appreciate that you are identifying nonprofits in your community and that you guys are taking your time and giving back to the community. It kind of is an inspiration to all of us to do more for our community, and we thank you.
That's entrepreneurship at its best by some of our youngest citizens who do the best they can to help our own community. And, last year Parks Partners, this year Homes for the Homeless through the animal shelter. It can't get any better than this. We're really, really proud. Okay, the next item we have, because I had mentioned some months ago that we like to recognize individuals or organizations that have done some special things in our community. And Mr. Heberlin, John Heberlin, came up to me, actually sent me a letter about a day later, and talked about some specific things that have happened to some very deserving young men and women. And so I thought this would be a great opportunity this evening also to recognize them. Let me read you a little bit of this letter that John wrote. It says, every year our students at Calvary Chapel Christian Academy amass hundreds of hours serving the community. As you know, often Universal City is the beneficiary of that service. That service is recognized nationally through the Points of Life Foundation and the Presidential Volunteer Service Award. Students are recognized at 3 levels of service: gold, silver, bronze. The number of hours required to achieve these various levels varies according to age. For example, to achieve the gold level, a student 10 years old and younger must perform at least 75 hours. At the other end of the spectrum, high school students must perform at least 250 hours. Okay? Each year, we have typically a dozen students who are recognized. He said this year, there are 13 students who were recognized for more than 2,000 collective hours of service. And I would like to read off the names of these young men and women, and if they are here, please come on up as I read your name. I don't know if all of you here this evening, but I certainly want to recognize all of you. So on the gold level, we have Alana Galloway, 7th grade. Ethan Romero, 10th grade. Melody Ballesteros, 10th grade. Jonathan Mascasadia, okay, and Faith Coruzada. Okay, that's at the gold level. And oh no, wait a minute, I've got 3 more. Hope Pickens, 11th grade. There you go, Hope. Ashley Mascasadia, 12th grade, and Rebecca Paley. Very good, Rebecca. Those are the golds. Now let me read you the silver. 1 silver. Okay. Kieran Aguilar, 1st grade. How about that? Huh? Bronze, we have Adeline Avitia, 1st grader. Navina Gomez, 3rd grade. Ronnie Marvel, 7th grade. Ty Jones, 12th grade. And we also have Caleb Pickens. Caleb, are you here this evening too? Come on up here. Okay, I want to recognize these students. John said if I decide we'd like to do that, the answer is absolutely. You guys have gone above and beyond, and it's from the minimum of 75 hours to 250 hours, and many of you donated many more of those hours. So we want to congratulate all of you on what you've done, and thank you for being members of our community. I know you don't live here, but you live here. Real quick?
Only that these guys really are beautiful examples of giving of themselves. Their service covers a wide array of recipients. University of St. just is one of many. Caleb and Hope helped their dad in his ministry to disadvantaged young ladies. They've rescued a whole bunch of young ladies in their ministry. Oh, thank you. I'm used to being told to quiet down, not speak up. And while certainly the city and our church community are huge recipients, it goes a long way. Our next scheduled event is a week from today, early in the morning, to paint some more fire hydrants. We've painted about 40 for the city, and we're going to do about a dozen more on Tuesday. So they love it. They all have fun. And the only thing we have to fight is they're so busy doing other things that it's hard to set a time. But everyone from little Kieran all the way to Rebecca, who has already graduated, it's just wonderful to work with these guys. They're inspiring.
John, thank you very much for bringing this to our attention. Congratulations, you guys, for all you do. You're giving above and beyond yourself in what you're supposedly doing. You're doing something else for other people, and there's nothing but praise for you guys for what you do. Congratulations. Those are the really fun parts about being on the city council. We can recognize.
No, you guys are going to miss all the interesting stuff.
You are welcome to stick around, but we understand. I can't say it's because we're all back to school.
Thank you, everybody. Oh, Mr. Maxwell's here.
Okay, very good. Thanks very much. What an honor to be able to recognize these young people, because they're the future leaders of our city and our country, and to be able to recognize them for what they do without being forced to do it. It's pretty special. It's pretty special. Okay, let's move on then now to our consent agenda, which is tab number 8.
Thanks, John.
which is all matters listed under the item are considered to be routine by City Council and will be enacted by one motion. There'll be no separate discussion of these items, but if discussion is desired, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. We have A, B, and C tonight. A is considered the minutes of the Wednesday, July 12th meeting. B is considered the minutes of the Tuesday, July 18th regular meeting. And C is an ordinance related to 2326 Patrick Road, Suite 916, University City. So, move to approve. Second. Councilmember Najarian, second by Councilmember Goolsby. Any further discussion? All right, call for the vote then, please.
Councilmember Najarian.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Goolsby.
Aye.
Councilmember Buck.
Aye.
Councilmember Bulman.
Aye.
Councilmember Fitzpatrick.
Aye.
Councilmember Vaughan.
Aye.
That motion carries. We shall proceed on then. We have citizens to be heard as our next item on the agenda. No one had signed up as of at the start of this meeting. Did anybody want to address council that did not have a chance to fill out? Okay, that's on. Item number 8 is our business item. What I would like to bring to your attention is that under no tab 1 after tab F, there's scheduled to be a presentation and discussion on the FY23 tax rates. We have not yet received the no new revenue rate, so I'm suggesting that we pull this item off because until we have the rate, there's really not any point for our discussion. So let's pull this off, and as soon as we can get that rate, we have a couple of options. One is to have a special meeting, one is to do it at our next council meeting. So once we get the rate, we'll contact all of you all, and let you know what the potential options are. So, we'll pull that unless there's any objection. I think that's only the wise thing for us to do. Okay, hold on. All right, tab number B. I want to bring that up in case anybody was here specifically for that tax rate. All right, first is tab B, discuss and to consider the financial audit report for fiscal year 2021-2022. The FY 2022 draft audit report can be found on the following website, as you see on there, but because it was so big, it was even for us on council, it was submitted to us this way as well. We've all had access to it, we've all had a chance to review it. So, City Manager, ma'am, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, and we also thank the council members who call us and ask questions. It's always helpful for us to know. That way, when we're putting the presentations together, we can gather data that we think is valuable to all of you. First of course, I want to start with a huge thank you to two very bright women, Christine Green, our finance director, who has done a yeoman's work in going back and backtracking through somebody else's budget and somebody else's spreadsheets and data and figuring out what we needed to do to get this audit done. And she did spend a tremendous amount of time, which I hope you were very thankful for. Also to Janet Pittman, because she started the audit and then we made her stop. We went back and corrected a bunch of stuff, and then we made her start over again using the second round of numbers that we felt were a little more prudent. So with that, I thank both of you, and I'll turn it over to Janet to do the presentation, and we're all here to answer questions for you.
Thank you, Kim.
Okay.
Thank you for having me here this evening to go over the results of your 2022 audit. As Kim mentioned, we did meet with Councilman Vaughan and with Kim and with Chris and went over the draft in detail. So you do have the final draft now, and we'll move on, go on with it. So what's in this document? There's, it's a large document. That's a list of all the items that are in the document, and we're just going to go briefly through each one individually. So our independent auditors report, we do have to follow three sets of standards. Generally accepted audited standards, because you're a local government and you did receive federal funds this year. We're also required to follow the government auditing standards and the uniform guidance. The purpose of an audit is to form an opinion on whether your financial statements are presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, and they are. And our independent audit opinion is what we call unmodified opinion. It sounds bad, but it's really the best opinion that you can get on your financial statements. And that has been continuing throughout the years. Next slide, please. The first item in the financial area is the management discussion and analysis. It's a presentation of this year versus last year, and those are the different items that are in there. And again, we'll go through very high level some of the financials. So your government-wide financial statements is divided in between governmental activities, which is your general fund, your debt service fund, your capital projects fund, and they're presented in one column in a full accrual basis of accounting. And then your business type activities, which are your water and sewer fund, your golf fund, and your stormwater fund, all in one line item, one column, sorry. So your assets did exceed your liabilities this year, net position, which is your net position, by 83.2 million. 40.1 million is attributable to the governmental activities and 43.1 million to the business type, out the same amount. The entire net position did increase by 7.8 million this year. The governmental activities increased by 2.9 million. You had an increase in both the sales tax, the franchise taxes, your property taxes, and the grants. Of course, that was the American Rescue Plan money that you received. Your business type activities increased by 4.9 million, and that was due to the charges for services in the water and sewer fund, and also your golf course fees and the associated revenue from the golf course.
Janet, we do have a question about Councilmember Buck.
Is that okay? Thank you, ma'am.
Absolutely.
Thank you. When you say that our net position increased by 7.8 million, that's our assets of the city exceeded its liabilities from that top one, right? So in other words, our overall balance sheet, our net operating reserve increased by $7.8 million. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, good. Anytime anyone wants to ask a question, please just raise your hand. We'll go ahead. All right, Janet.
Thank you. Next one. So then we're going to talk about just the governmental funds, which again includes your general operating fund, your capital projects, and your debt service fund. The total fund balances in there are 23.3 million this year. Your unassigned fund balance in the general fund is $14.5 million. That represents actually 12 months of operating reserves, not including the capital outlay. So even though it wasn't effective for 2022, you have met your fund balance policy that you enacted in 2023. You do have some restricted funds in there. In the general fund, you have $1.7 million of restricted funds. Capital projects funds, $5.4 million. That's your leftover bond money that you haven't spent yet. And the debt service ended up with a restricted fund balance of $1 million.
Okay.
Questions?
Oh, Mr. Buck, Mr. Long?
We had talked a little about the capital projects fund balance.
Yes.
Did you have a chance to look into it and what makes up the
We
balance?
did, and Randy.
Oh, it's 3.1, that is the national and East Langley that we issued for that. And then the remaining balance of the East Aviation that is being used for Kitty Hawk Service Road to the ETJ.
Okay, so it's not restricted though, right? I mean, we could repurpose that to something else if we chose the other 2 million.
Well, it's all bond money.
It's all bond.
It's all bond. It's all
What is
bond
all
money
bond?
for street projects.
Which bond are we talking about?
East Aviation bond, which we issued in 2016.
It's that part of the $20 million bond that we issued.
So you're saying there was a bond we issued in 2016 and we haven't spent it all?
Correct.
Do you agree with
I
that?
do, they have a spreadsheet that shows that all the expenditures related to the bond money. And then the other piece is the bond that was issued last year.
And how did we handle the grant reimbursements for aviation? Was that mixed in or was that not mixed in?
That was, it was expensed and the revenue was in the capital projects fund.
So is that what's creating part of the fund balance?
No, because part of that the city paid for also.
Okay.
I think it was either 25% or 20%.
I
I think it was,
What was your
I think it was
balance on East
20%.
Aviation?
Yeah, it was 20%,
Yeah.
so it goes back into our bond fund to fund the Kitty Hawk Road project.
Or whatever else we'd like it to be for.
It's already been allocated for.
By,
Well, we went to council in previous to do the 3.1, which is national and East Langley.
correct.
In which council also authorized the roadway that we're doing
To the ETJ.
to the ETJ.
Okay, well, think that's debatable, we can hash that out later, but thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Janet?
All right. In the general fund, the revenues did increase this year, about $1.9 million. Total revenues were 17.7. There's the breakout of the increases ad valorem tax, sales tax, franchise, and then the grant was quite the largest increase, and that's due to the American Rescue Plan dollars that you received. Expenditures were $15.9 million. They did have a large increase of $2.4 million. Again, most of it was due to the American Rescue Plan expenditures that you had. Police and fire always increase a little bit each year. On your proprietary funds, so again, those are your water and sewer, your stormwater, and your golf. All of them had an increase in their net position, and you can see the numbers there. I didn't read them all, but they all had a nice increase in their net position. Yay, golf.
Any questions? All right, go ahead.
All right, so we also have two other audit reports in our, in your financials. One is related to government auditing standards. We do not have any material weaknesses in internal controls to report, and the other is related to your uniform guides for the American recovery funds. We performed a compliance audit this year, a compliance examination. We do not have any findings or questioned costs. And the city has complied with all the specified requirements related to those funds that you received. That's all I have on the financial statement. We also issued a letter on the conduct of the audit. Most of these are just required communications. You did have an accounting policy change this year related to leases. You did have some significant estimates in your financials related to, mainly to the TMRS and your OPEB liabilities for pensions. We did not experience any difficulties with management in performing our audit. We did have some audit journal entries. They are attached to the letter that you did receive. You can see that there were quite a few, but management has recorded those and we're all good. We did not have any disagreements with management in performing our audit. We have asked for management to sign a letter just saying that we received everything that we needed to do our audit. That's a management representation letter. As far as we know, we didn't have any consultants with other independent accountants kind of searching for a different way to do something. And then we had two comments. One was compliance with the Public Funds Investment Act. We are required to do an audit over your compliance with the Public Funds Investment Act and your investment policy. We did have one finding there. Your pledged collaterals were not, your pledged securities were not fully collateralized by a significant amount this year. I think it is due to your change in your bank. You changed from Techstar, who wasn't watching those, but as of October 1st, 2022, American Bank did fully collateralize your deposits. Yes.
Yes, Ms. Buck.
Can you put that in non-auditor speak, please?
Okay. You have many different bank accounts, and you are required by the Public Funds Investment Act and your investment policy to have your bank pledge securities in case they fail. So those pledged securities would replace your deposits.
So that means that the bank has to somehow guarantee our deposits. It's
That
similar
is-
to what the federal government does with the FDIC.
That is correct.
They have to have their own collateral that they say, in the event that we were to go broke, we will be able to reimburse you your monies so that you as a city will not be financially disrupted.
That is correct, and those securities have to be pledged in the city's name. So they were short by almost $6 million at the end of the year.
Is this an oversight issue with the city, or is this a lack of the bank doing what they were supposed to?
I believe in your depository contract that your bank is supposed to be watching that. If you knew you were gonna get a huge deposit that the bank didn't know about, yeah, you should be calling the bank and letting them know, this is gonna show up in our bank account overnight, so that they can move some pledged securities.
So they can make sure that they have enough collateral?
Yes. But, I think, feeling that Techstar just wasn't watching it, so.
But we're back, but we're good now?
The following day, you were good. American Bank had already moved in, taken over the accounts, and you were fully collateralized. So, and management is pledged that they're going to watch that on a monthly basis, just to make sure. The bank is doing their
We
job.
set up a due date with them, and they'll send us our pledge every
Thank you.
The other comment was just on bank reconciliations weren't done timely. Again, we had some deposits coming in September. There was about $2.5 million. It was the American Rescue Plan money. Wasn't posted to your general ledger till the end of December. So again, it's just something that needs a policy procedure in place that we're doing those timely, and management has committed to do those by the 15th after the end of each month. So the 15th of the following month, they will have the bank reconciliations done and agree to the general ledger. With that, I want to always thank Kim and Chris, and if you have any questions, I would surely take them. Did you want to add anything?
Let's go ahead and open it up for discussion, and I'll call for a motion. Mr.
And anybody else before me? I've already spoken.
Anybody else?
Go ahead.
Pardon? Mr. Buck?
I just wanted to ask Ms. Pittman, how much time did you spend, and do you have an estimate on how many hours you spent doing this audit?
I don't on the top of my head. It's significant.
Do you remember what week and month you started?
We started in January. We came back in May.
Are you gonna be off for the next 6 months until you have to start the next one?
Well, it's, I mean, this is our.
Don't you wish?
It's a-
Thank you for doing all of this, we appreciate all
Oh, I
the hard work
appreciate
that
it.
both of you have put in.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, let me go ahead and entertain a motion, and then we'll pass on further. Unless Phil, you want to talk now?
I'll take that.
Okay.
Move for approval. Second.
Motion made by Councilmember Vaughan, second by Councilmember Buck. Any further discussion, anybody? All right, call for the vote then, please.
Councilmember Vaughn.
Aye.
Councilmember Buck.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Goolsby.
Aye.
Councilmember Bulman.
Aye.
Councilmember Fitzpatrick.
Aye.
Councilmember Najarian.
Aye. Thank you. I know it was a long, arduous process, and I think it all came out good. And thank you to the city staff, Christine, city manager, everybody that worked on it. Janet, thank you for your group, for your attention, serious attention. And we need it. Obviously, we need it. Every city needs that kind of a really outside look at what we're doing. And as far as I'm concerned, you get it was an effort that took a long time, but it's not complete for FY22.
We'll see you again next year.
All right, thank you very much, Janet.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, let's move on to tab number C then. Discuss and to consider memorandum of understanding with the Reunion Development Partners, LLC. Sure.
Thank you, Mayor. As you know, you have a committee that has been doing some planning and negotiating with Reunion for the 43-acre parcel out on Route 1604. 33 is for the city, 10 is for the EDC. We have made some major strides in that area. We've obviously got the phasing done. We've got some numbers that we've gotten on our side and numbers that they've gotten on their side. And so we're continuing through that process. We anticipate in a very short amount of time that we'll be coming back with Reunion, and they will be having some discussions with the city council and the EDC on how they would like to proceed. But at this point, our MOU is about to expire, so to continue on, we needed an extension of the MOU.
Okay.
Move for approval. Second.
Councilmember Vaughan. Second by Lieutenant Goolsby. Any discussion, anyone on this? Okay, let's call for the vote then, please.
Councilmember Vaughn.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Goolsby.
Aye.
Councilmember Buck.
Aye.
Councilmember Bulman.
Aye.
Councilmember Fitzpatrick.
Aye.
Councilmember Najarian.
Aye.
Motion passes. We'll move on then to tab number D, which is to discuss and to consider the presentation on those street bond packages. Mr. Turner?
Thank you, Mayor. As you know, we had the city's consultants here last week, and they went over the street bond presentation, and they provided some packages for you that did total $36 million. And council had requested a little more time to look at that. I hope it was beneficial to you. I know that several of you have come to meet with me regarding those items, and I appreciate the fact that you did. There were some questions that were asked about other economic development projects we have going on in the city and its relationship to this particular bond package. Just want to advise you that if you intend to talk about those projects, we have only talked about those in executive session. And so if there are questions that you're going to ask about those particular projects in its relationship to the bond package, then you'll need to request the mayor to move you into executive session.
Mr. Mayor,
Okay, yes, Mr.
I have some things that I would like to talk about in relation to what Mr. Turner was discussing as far as the economic development issues.
Okay. All right. Anyone else? Yeah, I think there are some issues that are economic development related that would let's be discussed in a closed session. So I think we'll go ahead and according to the Texas Government Code, we can do that, discuss particular items that are related to economic development. And we can move into a closed session now. It is 7:01, so let's go ahead and move into closed session, and we'll be back as quickly as we can. Thank you.
The daughter related, a lot of it went over her head. I cried.
Good talk. That was two people
Okay, everyone's fine. Let's go ahead and reconvene. Our meeting is now 7:40, and no action has been taken as a result of that closed session. So we'll go back then to tab number D to discuss and consider the presentation of proposed street bond packages.
Mr. Mayor, motion to postpone this tab discussion.
Motion made by Councilmember Black.
Second.
Go to second, Mayor Pro Tem Goolsby. Any discussion further? Okay, call for vote then, please.
Councilmember Buck.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Goolsby.
Aye.
Councilmember Bulman.
Aye.
Councilmember Fitzpatrick.
Aye.
Councilmember Najarian.
Aye.
Councilmember Vaughan.
Aye.
Okay, we'll postpone and get back to on this subject as quickly as we can. So a lot of other things we need to look at. Okay, let's move on. Tab number E, discuss and to consider fence requirements.
Thank you, Mayor. This was a topic and presentation requested by the City Council. Michael has done some research, and he's going to go ahead and do a presentation, and then we'll open it up for discussion.
Okay, Michael.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Okay. So yes, we have a presentation to discuss the current fence requirements and then different possibilities, because this was brought to our attention that you may want to relook at the existing requirements for fences. And so, can we go to the next slide, please? So currently, the IBC and the IRC and the IPMC, they require, if you just went by the strict letter of the law within those codes, that you need to get a permit if it's 7 feet or taller. So anything below 7 feet does not require a permit. However, the city did adopt an amendment that requires a permit for fences regardless of the height. Okay.
Do you want to just for clarification of the audience to tell them what IBC and IRC stand for?
Oh, sure. The International Building Code and the International Residential Code. And then we have also the International Property Maintenance Code, IPMC.
Good. Okay. Thanks, Mike.
And I'll just put out there right now that the IBC, the International Building Code, is the parent code. And within that, Chapter 1 of the IBC, it does state that all other code references and other codes, meaning the IRC, IPMC, do fall back on whatever the IBC says. So that's the overarching parent code that we follow. So the city then made the amendment that requires a permit for all fences. And later we came back in 2020 and provided an update to the rules and regulations for residential and commercial fences. Next slide, please.
I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Buck?
Thank you. Could you go back to that previous slide? The middle bullet there says that it was city ordinance from 2022, is that correct?
Yes, that's because we adopted the 2021 IBC.
IBC
the host
building, and that
ICC
was,
cycle.
and that was part of that whole package.
Correct.
It was late May, early June, I think.
Correct.
And I would add when we had the former code, which was the Southern Building Code, and when we had adopted the IBC, IRC, and the IMPC, I believe for the first time it was in 2005, we had the same fence requirements then that we have today.
So we've had this requirement to have a permit for a fence regardless of height on our books for quite a while, it would seem.
Yes.
Do you know how long?
Well, I've been here 23 years, so 23 years that I know of. Now, it might have been under the Southern Building Code as well. I don't know. I'd have to go back to the Southern Building Code amendments and look at that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Next slide, thank you. And so this is the existing rules. I can go through all these or just kind of do a summary. So basically, you can put a fence for residential, let's just focus on that, in all yard areas. For the front yard, we have height restrictions, meaning it can only be 3 feet in height, but if you want to have a 4-foot fence, it has to be 50% transparent. And those are the decorative white picket fences that you see in some front yards of different properties. Let's see, and then side and rear, you can go up to 6 feet in residential districts. The business districts in the C4 and C5 are allowed to install an 8-foot fence. And we also have a requirement that if a commercial building, a multifamily, an apartment complex, or an industrial type use goes in next to or adjacent to a residential property, then they have to install a 6-foot fence. The residential properties have the right to install an 8-foot fence at that location, on that property line. So that was one of the updates that we provided back in 2020. Some other rules, let's see here. We don't enforce HOA rules, so we often come across that where folks, they don't check with the city, or they check with the city and they get a permit, and then the HOA tells them that's in violation of the HOA rules, so they then have to deal with the HOA. Again, we don't enforce HOA rules. We have to abide by the city regulations. There are certain conditions, and this just follows up on that last comment. North Lake, the business park, has its own specific rules within the CC&Rs, the covenants for that subdivision that talk about fences, and so do some other Olympia Hills, Collingwood properties. And then we also take a look at the visibility triangle, which is very important from a safety standpoint on corner lots. Want to make sure that there isn't obstruction to prevent any accidents. Next slide, please.
Sure.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
I apologize again. Could you go back to the previous slide? Could you speak to what some of those special conditions are? Specifically, I understand North Lake is an industrial park. I can understand they've got special requirements. Can you speak to what are some of those Olympia Hills and Collingwood properties, special conditions that they've been granted?
Sure, well, I'm not an expert because, again, I don't look at the HOA CC&R specifically, but generally, they're really concerned about the aesthetics.
So those are HOA
Those are
conditions,
HOA
not
specific.
city conditions.
But there are some conditions within the plat for in the Olympia area. The properties that back up to the golf course have to have wrought iron fences. We don't want a wood fence backing up to the golf course. You are on the golf course, you drive around, you see a lot of them have no fences, and the ones that are backing up to the golf course have wrought iron fences. We do generally look at those, but the thing about wrought iron fences, they don't have to be changed very often, so we haven't had a fence change on that. The one for Collingwood is very important for access to a sewer easement that Randy has. They're on a natural drainage channel. Abutting next to that is the city sewer easement, and Randy has to be able to get to it all the time. So they actually have to have a removable fence in the back.
So that Randy doesn't have to tear it up every time he needs to.
Every time we need to go in there. And then, because the drainage easement and the sewer easement is not a straight line, if you went back in there and looked, you'll see that their fence lines jog. Most of the time, you'll see a straight fence line in a subdivision. Theirs do not.
Thank you.
Next slide, please. So just in general, we issue approximately 135 fence permits a year. The second item there, the variances, over time, and as far back as I could in our spreadsheet, looks like it went back to the 70s. There have been 52 requests for variances, and 37 of those were granted. So we don't often get variance requests, maybe 1 or 2 a year. And we talk to folks beforehand and let them know, what the BOA, the Board of Adjustment, might ask, what questions, what concerns. We ask them to, it would be helpful if they got written sign off from their neighbors. So we just try to help them succeed. But then again, it's kind of, really depends, it's a case specific situation at the BOA. So a fence permit costs $85. That's a flat fee. And so that includes processing the permit itself and also the inspection. And so as part of our flat fee permit schedule that we conducted and implemented several years ago, we basically identified what it costs the city to basically process and administer and inspect certain different types of permits. And so it came to about $75 if you add those two, administration and inspection fee for a half hour. So one inspection is a half hour, and what the inspector is looking at is the location, the height, materials, the smooth side should be facing out in the public view shed, and then also we have a restriction on double fences in town, so you can't have a back-to-back fence, and then also the stability. Next slide, please. So, we put together some options for you. Obviously, the first option was do nothing, but these are the other options. Is that we don't require a permit or inspections. We just let folks do what they want. They'd be very happy with that, but there are some implications to that. So no permit, no inspection, and no fee. The next item is just so we have something on the record for who has a fence. Is that we require them to get a permit, but they don't have to have a registered contractor with the city install it. There's no fee, we won't inspect it, but the question then is, do we make them follow the current requirements if those are not changed? Next option is we have them get a permit, again, no fee, but we do conduct an inspection to make sure they're following the rules if those are still in place. Question is, do we require them to use a registered contractor in the city? Then the next item or option is we don't require a permit for maintenance. And so we have to define maintenance. The way that we currently define maintenance is, as it states up there, is basically one panel, which is about 8 feet or 16 pickets. So if they were to just replace one panel, then they wouldn't have to get a permit. If you go to the next slide. So there's a lot of pros and cons here. So we wanted to identify the potential issues that the city, basically code compliance, will face. One is safety, health, and general welfare issues. So if they don't have a registered contractor, if we're not out there inspecting it, then is it going to be stable? Well, that's up to that homeowner or that property owner to ensure that their contractor is installing the fence that they paid for. The police, they are unable to scale in general. A fence that is higher or taller than 6 feet, they can scale a fence that is 6 feet or lower more easily. And then the code we would be reactive only. So we would only look at specific issues or instances when someone filed a complaint. Here's the big one, is neighbor disputes. This is going to drastically, if we do change things and don't require a permit, we're going to have a lot of neighbor wars. We already have a lot of neighbor wars, but it's going to increase by approximately, let's just say all the permits that are issued every year, 135 more opportunities for neighbors to disagree with their neighbor and come and complain and ask the city to get involved. In general, if you have a lot line dispute we just went through this last week, then it's really, it's a civil matter. We're not going out there, we're not looking at the survey, we're not measuring, we're not looking where the pins are and looking at the placement of the fence. That's up to them. They need to figure that out. But we're gonna get increased calls and we're gonna be asked to mediate or intervene. People are gonna be installing 7, 8, and 10-foot fences at their will. And then again, that's gonna lead to a neighbor not being happy with a 10-foot fence in their backyard.
Let me stop you there for just a moment. So earlier when you talked about the variances that went before the Board of Adjustments, the majority of the time it is for a taller fence. And a lot of time it was somebody who already got caught installing a taller fence. And you think, really, who's going to construct a 12-foot fence? Oh, 10 and 12-foot fences have been constructed and haven't been taken down.
Didn't you say at the beginning of this presentation, though, that the IBC and the IRC, that's the like rule that we have to fall back on? So you couldn't get a 12-foot, 10-foot, 8-foot, 7-foot fence?
No, the IBC only states that you need to get a permit for anything 7 feet or taller.
But, okay,
It
so,
doesn't say you can't have a 10-foot fence. It just says if you do get a 10-foot fence, you need to get a permit.
okay, but you're saying there'll be disputes, even if these people they'll have to get a permit though for their 7, 8, 9, 10.
Oh, I don't know, that's up to you guys, if you want to
But
change
if our
that.
rule is a 6-foot fence, and they come in and they say, I want a permit for a 7-foot fence, we're not gonna give them a permit for a 7-foot fence. We get requests for tall fences all the time, and we say, the rule is 6 feet. But in the IBC, it says if you're gonna get a permit for a fence, it has to be a permit for a fence that's over 7 feet tall. We took an exception to that rule. And to control the heights of fences and the locations of fences, we said everybody needs to get a permit. The maximum height on a fence is 6 feet.
Oh, I didn't realize we had a rule that said it literally can't be over 6 feet.
Yes.
For residential, certain
Okay,
fences can be 8 feet.
okay.
That's in our ordinance.
Yes.
Strong.
Why do you think the international code doesn't think permits are necessary for fences under 7 feet?
I don't know. I couldn't guess.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, Brent.
It's typically because it's a structural issue.
Oh.
Anything over that height,
Requires a structural engineer.
typically.
That's why.
And anything over 7,
But why no permits under 7?
because it's not a structural issue.
Oh, because it's not a structural issue. Okay.
Thank
Typically,
you.
sorry, thank you.
That's
So
why
the
I forgot
garden
to- you have to calculate the wind load once it gets past that to make sure that they're the wind load for whatever the area that was in. There's probably extra reinforcement that has to go into anything higher than that.
The landscape walls have a different height requirement where they require a stamp, so I would debate that a little bit.
Sorry, go ahead.
So again, those are the potential neighbor disputes that, the city will encounter if the rules are changed, depending on how the rules are changed, if they are. Next slide, please. So again, just talking about the different issues if the rules are changed, the view shed, so aesthetic. So one of the reasons that we have the code that we do is because the city has expressed that it would like to ensure that fences that face the public view shed have the smooth side out. They look nicer than the back side that has that looks like a ladder, essentially. So we provided some examples, some photos of fences. If you drive up and down Universal City Boulevard, you'll see that the majority of fences have the smooth side out. And so if people had a choice, my guess is that they would put that smooth side in, and driving up and down UC Boulevard would look different. Depending on the HOA then. In some neighborhoods don't have an HOA up and down UC Boulevard. And so here's an example in the the lower photo that has a smooth side out next to a smooth side in, and this is on Kitty Hawk going towards Public Works. So the question is, if you still want to keep the smooth side out, is it the public view shed, or is it does that not apply to alleys, easements, roads like UC Boulevard? More parks over at Universal City Park. There's a lot of fences, and you can see there's a lot of different types of fences. There's chain link fences, you have wooden fences that are both smooth side in and out, so it's kind of a hodgepodge. And that's, the public has, you know, that's their impression of the city when they go to the park. Next slide, please. These are just some more examples. And,
Okay, wait, like one of those is my fence, so. So hold on, I bought the house.
I realized that about
So-
5 minutes before the.
I know those posts.
Like,
Anyway.
watch this, we're gonna put Ashton's picture.
No, it's fine, I don't really care because who cares, but my question, I didn't build the fence, the house was built in the 70s. My fence is what, like grandfathered in then because this wasn't a rule when
Yeah,
this
so if you had
happened?
to replace
But
it.
if I had to replace it, I would have to, not to make this personal, that's my fence, and it just hit me now that I thought it was smooth side out, I don't pay attention.
And I took that picture because I look at that, that's my view out of my office every day.
You like that? Wow. Okay, no, it's fine, I realized, and I was like, okay, but some of these have been grandfathered in, is what you're saying, because they were already built in the 70s. So if someone went and redid their fence, if I blew mine down, I'd have to switch my pickets facing the other way. Gotcha, okay. Just
And so,
clarifying.
you know, frankly, some people don't want it. In fact, a lot of people, they want that, because they've had that smooth side in, they want that smooth side in to stay, because their argument is, I'm paying for that fence, $10,000, whatever it is for a fence, and I want to look at the nice side. I don't care what everyone else sees. So that's why it's important for us to get direction from City Council as to which.
Okay, so everybody's had a chance to look at that ordinance that was passed in 2020. Before you is, you want to make changes. What is your position on this? What do we want to share with council before we go ahead and take a motion? Yes, Phil.
Just to be clear, there's two different things we're talking about. So one is the design rules for the fences, which is in a separate part of the code, and then the code that says, do you need a permit for a fence? That's section 105.2. Correct?
Yes. Yeah, so there's the IBC that is the parent code to the other codes, IPMC and IRC. And that says, we removed that. We had an amendment to that section of the IBC that says you need to get a permit.
So if we made a change to that 105.2 section, all the rules still stay in place. So you still have to follow the rules, it's just you're not going to be checking to make sure they're following the rules unless it comes to your attention.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
Okay. Are we open to a motion? Or-
Yes, absolutely. I'll be glad to entertain a motion. We'll consult on the discussion again after that.
I would move that we direct the staff to bring us an ordinance to a future meeting to remove section 105.2 from the building code and residential code.
All right, there's a motion by Mr.
Oh,
Vaughan.
second.
Second by Councilmember Bulman.
Yes.
Yeah, point of clarification, please.
Are we removing 105.2 from the code, or are we removing our local amendment?
Our local amendment from the code.
Okay.
Get that?
So,
So reinsert it to be an exemption to 105.2.
More specifically, it is to remove section 105.2. And so I printed for everyone here the section of the National Business Code that talks through the exemptions of permits, and the fences is one of those.
Is that the IBC or the IPMC that you have?
IBC.
IBC?
It is. They have a copy if you want to take a look at it, or
So more than fences.
the,
you understand
removing
it
this
covers
section
more
would
than,
address the fence. There are a couple others that would be impacted as well. So are you already worried about the agenda item?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Because we've only discussed fences, had a presentation on fences, and so I thought that's what the item was just a discussion on fences.
It is. So if I need to bring that up separately, I will.
Okay.
So are you saying that there's a problem with it for the agenda item? Because I'll amend it if I need to.
I don't believe it conforms to the agenda item as posted, but if you want to proceed, you certainly can.
Well, no, if you don't think it's legal, I don't want to do anything that's not legal. So I'll amend my motion and say I would recommend that we bring an ordinance to add the fences not over 7 feet high exemption from permits into section 105.2 of our building code. Reinsert it as an exception.
Okay, that's his motion. Do you?
Second.
So, as it's been restated and second.
As restated, yes, second.
Can I ask for
Yeah.
clarification?
we need way
Go
more
ahead.
clarification.
So I just want to make sure that, so if we reinsert that, that means that folks would not have to get a permit for their fences that they install, which means no inspections, no registered contractor. They can, but you're saying that you still want them to follow the code in the other section of the code that talks about the height, the materials, the location. Is that correct?
Correct, like that wasn't something I would table today,
Okay.
as far as what I was looking at.
And so I will just say that will increase code compliance issues, because people are gonna try and get away with stuff.
They do now, so.
Well, I know they do.
And the exception says 7 feet, so you're gonna have lots of people putting up 7-foot fences where their neighbor only has a 6-foot fence, so you're gonna have this.
And we're gonna have to tell them to take it down to
Yes.
6 feet
That's correct.
if they put up a 7-foot fence.
Right, but this is what the International Building Code recommends.
Oh, I know, I'm just saying that, I wanna, think this through that I know what's gonna happen is that you're gonna have someone who's gonna put up a 7 or an 8-foot fence. We're not gonna know about it, it might be 3 months, and then someone's gonna rat them out, and we're gonna go look at it, and then we're gonna say, you gotta take it down to 6 feet. And they're like, no, I'm not. And it's just gonna be a battle that we're gonna have, right? Because it's a money issue. Why didn't I know about this? Why didn't you get me? That's what's gonna happen.
I also want to point out, if you go into, Ash made a very good point, if you go into some of the older subdivisions and you look at them, of course, I always go to Coronado, I love the Coronado subdivision, it's a beautiful subdivision. If you go in and you look at that, and I don't know when those houses were built, I'm gonna guess 70s, 60s, 70s.
80s.
70s, 80s, you'll see uniformly, they have 6-foot fences. And it does add to the aesthetic appeal of the neighborhoods, so.
There's just one more thing we want to bring up, is that we're also going to have an issue with folks putting a fence over the drainage and utility easements. And so the way the code is written is you're not supposed to do that. If it makes sense, the public works director, the city staff will look at that on an individual basis and can allow it, with the understanding that if there is an issue, a maintenance requirement, we have to get in there, that the cost is on them if we have to move their fence, because they're not all removable, like the example that was turned.
And we'll have to get that on record, otherwise everybody's gonna be fighting the city about that and/or going to the Board of Adjustments to get some kind of variance, or, there it is, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I understand about no permits, but I urge you to require permits. If you don't want them to pay a fee, that's one thing. But the permits, to have things in place is very important. What I deal with is a lot of, if you, in a subdivision, we have drainage easements. A lot of them will plug the drainage easement. That will back up water in other properties. What we have to do is instruct whoever comes and does apply for the permit, that they have to actually put wrought iron within 2 to 3 feet at the bottom. They'll have animals, and we tell them, yes, keep your animals in, but the rest can be privacy. So that's an important thing. Drainage issues are probably my #1 complaint when it comes to fences, being that water is traveling and plugs up, and we have to ensure, especially in Springwood, if you drive through Springwood, you'll see how we had to have all those drains where there is wrought iron underneath the picket fences through there. So that's one of the requirements that when they come in here. The other thing that you're gonna run into is future lawsuits. I was dealing with the Texas Conservancy on our park plan, our linear park along the Civil Creek. I just got done dealing with for over a year now, with about probably 5 property owners that I have my project manager working on, with those individuals that encroach into the Conservancy property, which is city property now, but has a Conservancy on it. Several years ago, one of the property owners, before they caught it, they filed a lawsuit, they fought each other. And being that the property owner had been maintaining it over 10 years, 12 years, whatever it was, they won the lawsuit by
Squatters' rights.
Squatters' rights. So that can continue to happen if we're not monitoring where these fence lines are going. We did have compliance with those property owners to move back out of Conservancy, because that was one of the requirements that we have to do to maintain that property, is making sure the property owners aren't throwing things over the fence, aren't encroaching on the property and stuff like that. So that's the only way we can catch it. Some of them, most of those, they didn't even come in with a permit. That's what we found out. We checked.
Did you have to pay for the fence replacement?
We didn't have to pay for the fence replacements, but I had to go out and hire a surveyor to survey the property line for them so they could put the fence on the property line. And that's what happens when you come in, you gotta show your property line so we can make sure that it's on the property line. The other thing, if you like your privacy, if you have privacy, and if somebody wants to go chain link and take down the fence, you're dealing with that as well. So some of these covenants, some of these areas that have privacy, those are those other issues that we'll deal with.
The other issue on back to drainage again is somebody who has maybe a slope in their property. Sometimes it's a small one, and sometimes it's a larger one, is what they will do so they can't see their neighbors is they will get railroad ties and they will build up under their fence and straighten it out. Well, guess what? Water doesn't go through those railroad ties, and then so it means it's find somewhere else to go. It's usually on a neighbor's property, which is why in the code it says your fence from natural grade. And then those that have the steeper topography, they will do a 6-foot fence here, and then the property drops, so they do an 8-foot fence, and then it drops more, and then they've got a 10-foot fence. Well, now they've gotten into the structural item that he picked out, and now the non-structural, or the structural portion is a detriment to the neighbors. So that's why we always say a fence needs to be 6 feet tall, and it needs to follow the slope of the property. But quite frankly, it's incumbent upon our building official to go out there and look at that, and for us to give them the advice when they come in to get their permit.
And I do have one more example. This comes from my animal control. So you're allowed to have chickens in your backyard. I think limited 4. So you'll see that in some cases that they put chicken wire above the 6-foot fence through there, what's not allowed. So we've had cases like that where we had to have them taken down. So there's other things, building even pigeon coops, using the existing fence and stuff like that. So there's several things we've encountered where they extended the fence using other materials and stuff like that. Dog runs, exactly.
So I guess for me, and I know, is that if you're going to remove the requirement to get a permit, are there other things in the code that you want to remove as well? That's what I would just ask that you take a look at those other requirements that are in that other section.
Okay. We have a motion and a second, so we need to continue discussion on those two guys. I think, Member Goolsby, then we'll move.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'm game for the motion and where we're at, with the idea of let's come back in a year. Let's see how many of these horrible things have happened. And then let's see how much of an increase that's happened to us. That's one thing where I'm headed. The other one is, the idea of, right now you can replace 16 pickets, I believe is what it says. Well, you don't have to get a permit unless you're replacing something greater than that. If you're replacing 30 feet of your fence, something along those lines, then you get the permit.
Yeah, but you know what's going to happen? Is someone's going to do 2 sections.
I wouldn't do that.
And then they do the other section, yeah. I mean, so it's a game that we'll have to continue with.
And then I would be happy about that. Then the other question I have is you said there's no back-to-back fences, right? And you described those as rat runs or even fire department issues as far as debris buildup in between those. But you said that a residential that backs up to a commercial, the commercial can only build a 6-foot, except for like North Lake, there's certain things that are allowed there. But if the business puts a 6-foot, you said the residential has the opportunity to come back and build an 8-foot. Is that
They have to work with
The two property owners work together.
Go ahead, Edward.
I'm just stating what the rules are.
But a lot of times when you have a commercial that backs up, in fact, a lot of Pat Booker Road, there's an alley between the commercial and the residential. Now, that's not considered a back-to-back fence, there's 15 feet between them. And in some areas where you have commercials, North Lake, that is abutting a residential area, you know, there's anywhere between a 15-foot and a 50-foot gas pipeline easement between them. Those are easy.
So I guess do we have any ideas? We've also been talking about budget and permits and things like that. That's not a huge hit. Do we have any idea how many permits for
Yeah,
fences?
so if we go to the next slide, please.
I don't remember.
It's about $11,500 is what we generate in revenue from fence permits.
I missed that.
Yeah, it was towards everything.
Okay, I was taking notes. I was playing with rats in my head. Okay, so that's not a huge budget hit, especially because we talked about but code compliance now. Now, if we do this, I would like to have something on the website that says, "Hey, is your neighbor's fence horrible? Fill out this form."
Oh, we won't have to put it on the website. We don't have to. We get calls every time, hey, my neighbor's doing a fence, they didn't ask me, or my neighbor put in a fence and it's over 6 feet tall. Hey, my neighbor's working on a fence and I think it's over on my property line.
And then the folks
We'll just
that,
say, oh, well, they didn't need a permit, they're fine.
so what's gonna happen is then the people who get caught, they're gonna say, well, my contractor said he talked to the city and the city didn't tell them they couldn't do that. Well, and that's a he said, she said, and it's likely not true. They didn't do their due diligence, and now they want to blame the city. So that's a constant fight.
What does that look like for you at the city? I mean, what does that look like for staff as far as, I mean, somebody is not in non-compliance, this fence, I mean, grass, all of this stuff starts to add up with code compliance. How much teeth do we have? I mean, do we even have teeth?
Well, yes, I mean, if they're in violation of the code, the ordinance that was passed by city council, then yes, we were able to go through the code compliance process. So in general, we give them a door tag. We try to talk to them if they answer their door. We give them a door tag, let them know that they're in violation. Please contact, code compliance, so we can explain to them what the issue is. If we don't get a response, then we'll send a letter. If we don't get a response in 2 weeks, we'll send another letter. And we'll send 2 letters. So a door tag and 2 letters, and then if they're still non-compliant, or they're not working towards compliance, then we will send it to the judge. And the judge they'll have to come to court and explain the situation.
How long is it before a court date?
So that process from start to finish, door tag to court, probably 4 months, 3 to 4 months. We try to give people every opportunity that we can. Again, one of the slides we pointed out, we only had 8 issues with fences, and I think they were all resolved. Now, case in point though, there was one that took over a year. A resident put up an 8-foot fence in the front yard and did not want to comply and was very belligerent, and that was just not a very good situation. But eventually, another family member had to step in or talk to the judge and agree to change it. So.
And once it gets to the judge, now we have new rules once it gets to the judge. So they have a case, which is usually 30 days later. They can postpone it for another 60 days. Megan, I don't remember how many times they get to defer their case now. It could be, it's up to the judge, but if they get a fail to appear, then they get set another court date 30 days down. If they have failed to appear to that one, then they actually end up with warrants.
During that whole process, we have the neighbor calling us going, what are you guys doing? And they send nasty emails and post stuff, and the city's not doing anything. Well, yeah, we are. You just don't know what the process is.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Mr. Jerry, then we'll get this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't want to minimize any of the things that we brought up tonight and the problems and this and that, but I really do think that we're overthinking this whole thing. And I only say that from the times and many people I've talked to that can't stand these requirements for doing the permit for the fencing, because most of it has been, hey, I want to replace so many pickets, and now it's going to cost me more, if there's the same amount, if not more, to get the permits and everything than it is for me to get some new pickets and put it up myself. And I'm thinking to myself, well, you're absolutely right. That is dumb. And a lot of it is the maintenance. So when you're putting somebody through, a homeowner through that kind of thing, it's kind of like, well, I don't want to pay that money. So then the fence goes into deterioration. It doesn't get fixed. And which brings down the neighborhood. When you're requiring somebody too many requirements, then you're putting somebody off of keeping their property up because of the expense, which I understand. If there's not enough, then you're letting them get away with too much. To me, permits are required to keep things standard and to keep things nice in the neighborhood. We already have ordinances that say you can have 6 feet, okay? If somebody wants to go out there and there's a whole bunch of bad pickets on there and they want to grab 20, 30 pickets and replace that, I say more power to them. They don't need any permit or any permission to do that to keep their thing up. Now, if you're going to take a 6-foot fence and you're going to replace 30 pickets with 37 foot, now you're not doing maintenance on your fence. You're changing the structure of your fence. And we have rules on that. So,
but it's open to interpretation, right? So we need that.
well, let's interpret this as, no, you can't do that. If your fence is 6 foot now, and we have requirements that you can only be 6 feet in certain areas, and maintenance is maintenance. You're replacing the same thing with better material. That's a maintenance issue. Now, if you, I am for letting that happen. I'm not in for letting people change the structure or building home and fencing at 6 feet and not getting a permit for it and having it fall down or having it not to code of what it needs to be. That needs to be permitted.
What about one section of one side of 3 sides, right? Just the backyard, rear. Is that maintenance? You're keeping the 2 sides the same, you're replacing the back.
If you're replacing your posts, and you're pulling up posts, and you're going to be replacing posts and everything, now you're getting into an issue where, do you know better than a contractor how far those posts have to be down, what the wind, no, you're not.
Typically they're 12 inches and they have about 2 inches of gravel. And they may or may not pour concrete.
I think you're missing my point.
No, I understand. It's just that we need direction from you because we have to justify.
Okay, this is my direction. My direction is we do need permits. I don't think we need to charge for these permits for general maintenance on your own fence. And then a lot of people have a problem with that. I would like people to be able to go out and say, I'm going to Home Depot, those pickets are old and look bad, I'm going to replace them. They replace them, it's the same picket, it's the same size, but it's new. If their neighbor wants to complain about that, I don't know why. But if you're talking about changing the height, if you're talking about changing the structure, if you're talking about changing anything in the rules that we have in place now, as far as adding or subtracting, that takes a permit that is going to take an inspection. If you're talking about changing things, that's one thing. If you're talking about maintenance, that's another. And like I say, that's where I've run into a lot of residents that this is where this whole thing came up. Why do I need to pay $85 to do some general maintenance on my fence?
I
haven't had anybody come up to me to say, I don't like paying $85 for me to build a new fence, that I don't have one here and I want to put one from here to here. Nobody's ever said anything like that to me, and I understand why, because they know that's not going to happen. We need, there's a specific reason that we have certain rules and regulations. Is, just like I say, you don't want somebody parking their old beat up car in their driveway with, taking down the property values of anybody else. And that's where I see this happening. So, getting into direction, I kind of like the combination of the two, where it says on the right-hand side, permit, no fee, inspection required. I don't know if you want to use a registered contractor or not, but on the bottom, no permit for maintenance. Defining maintenance is replacing some pickets or
And I know what you're saying. I also know what's coming and that people are creative.
you were talking about what was coming if we decided to do this without requiring any permits.
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
I said you were talking about if we weren't requiring any permits for certain things where you can see this big thing, and I agree, I absolutely agree. But,
yeah, I think, and I agree with you that a lot of the folks who have an issue with the fence requirements is maintenance, but then we have to define maintenance. So like I mentioned a few minutes ago, our 2 panels, do you have a post? Our 2 panels maintenance? Our 3 panels maintenance? And I don't want to have our staff have to, argue with people that, no, that's maintenance. It needs to be concretely defined in our code.
if you're not changing your post,
No, I'm saying if they're changing 1 post and 2 panels, 2
What if
sections.
they're changing out a panel and not putting in a gate? It's just a, I'm sorry.
well, that's changing,
I have that
that's
problem.
changing the structure. If you're changing the structure of something, that's where I think the major permitting needs to come in, because unless, if we all think we're great electricians until, we put in something and all of a sudden it pops. Hey, I Googled it, I saw it, I'll put in this new fence in a second, all of a sudden it doesn't work that way. So I'm trying to, and I think everybody's tracking with me here what I'm trying to say, general maintenance. If you've got pickets that you're replacing because the other ones are old, I don't care if there's 2 or 30, replace all the pickets you want. If you're gonna replace a 6-foot picket with a 7-foot picket, that's not replacing the picket, that's making a new type of fence. That requires something different. So that's what I'm putting out there. If we're gonna come down and to dot some i's and cross some t's on the way we do it, then let's do that. But yeah, it seems to be getting way out there.
I wish common sense prevailed, but people interpret it. So if you're just telling me that pickets, that's fine. As long as we have something that we can point to and say, this is what the code says.
90% of the people I
This is what
talk
maintenance
to,
is.
90% of the people I talk to that hate this $85 thing, it's exactly that. It's exactly that. Again, if you want to construct something new, that's new construction. So I'm thank you.
Ms. Fitzpatrick.
Thank you. I kind of am falling in the line with Paul, our Councilmember Najarian, and that I do think a permit is required for fences. I think it's a lot of money to be spent, and it begins to be a very emotional thing when you come after the fact and you're told that that's not in compliance. You're going to be protecting your investment, and I think there's a lot of things that can be done proactively that would help in that, mitigate any of those kind of things that come up. I will also say that I have sat in on a number of BOA meetings where fence issues were the variance that was being requested, and it was back-to-back fences, it was height issues because they had a big slope in their yard and they still wanted to have privacy. So those are the things that come up, and that people will just, if they're not having to pull permits, they will build a 12-foot fence because that's what's gonna block their view from their neighbor's house in their perception. In my discussions with people as I was walking around UC, it was the maintenance issue that was the biggest concern. That was the biggest frustrator, that they, like Paul said, had to spend more on the permit than they did on the replacement materials. And I do think the terminology pickets is the strong one, like if you're replacing a picket, even if it's up to saying 30 pickets, at that point, anything probably in excess of 30, you're probably having a whole maintenance issue with your fence. There's probably been more deterioration than just a little rottage that you need to fix, and probably do need to look at more maintenance than that. But I do think that it should say pickets only and no posts or no installing gates, anything like that is structural that should be required a permit. I am absolutely okay if we think from a city standpoint that we don't want to charge a fee for permits, but I still think we should have an inspection required. The fee isn't a big thing, but I definitely think for maintenance that there should be no fee. Thanks.
Okay, so everyone had a chance to weigh in on this? Mr. Buck, you got something else?
I have something really quick. Do you think that our inspector has a method for determining whether a fence was already located at a particular property?
Yeah.
What I'm getting at, Mr. Casada, is I recognize very clearly Mr. Linesman's points and your points about the challenges the city could face with not requiring a permit, not requiring an inspection, given drainage issues, easement issues, manhole cut, the list goes on and on and on. What if we could require an 80, so the suggestion of my fellow council members, I concur with Ms. Fitzpatrick and Mr. Najarian, and I also share the frustrations from the residents expressed by Mr. Vaughan and Ms. Bulman, because I heard a lot of that while I was out walking the streets as well. What if we could require the $85 permit for new installation where no fence existed previously? The reason being, the inspection process for a new installation would be significantly more in-depth than the requirement for maintenance that has been completed on an existing fence. The dividing line is you have to get a permit, you have to get an inspection, new installation, $85, refurbishment of whatever. If you had an existing fence before, no matter what level of maintenance or refurbishment you've done, whether it be 2 pickets or 75 pickets, no fee. I think that was the major complaint that I heard from residents, was that if because I've done my own maintenance on my fence, and I paid $85 in materials and $85 for the permit, and I was ticked. I didn't like it. Would we be open to something like that? We still have the measure of safety, that we can ensure that Randy, Mr. Linesman's, and Mr. Casada's concerns are met, and also appease the concerns of a lot of the residents, myself included, who were frustrated by the $85 permit fee required for any level of refurbishment or maintenance. How would that impact our city inspector? That would be a financial only, right? Because we're still going to have the same requirements, just that we're not going to charge the fee for the maintenance.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to put the onus on the inspector to determine whether or not there was a fence there previously. Because my fallback then, my direction that I would give to the inspectors is, look, I'm not going to argue with these people. If they said that there was not a fence there, then we're going to go with what they said. It's on them.
I would think that it could be relatively easy. Look at Google Earth, Google Street View, Google, clearly there was a fence there before.
At the front or the sides, in most cases, yes, through Google Street View. In a lot of areas though, where there's it's heavily
vegetated,
yes, that's a little more difficult.
Oh, shit.
The other option, going back to putting the onus on the property owner, just rolling with what you had said, Mr. Vaughan, Mr. Buck, was that, we always have the option of, if the homeowner comes in and says they're only doing maintenance, we have something for them to sign that says, I'm only going back with a 6-foot fence, I'm only putting the posts where they were before, I'm only putting the gates where in other words, make them sign their life away, that in fact they are just only doing maintenance to an existing fence and they're not adding anything to it.
But that we're registering that they have done the maintenance.
Yeah, we're registering that they have done the maintenance and we maybe have given them the no fee permit for it. But if in fact later at some time there is found out that they didn't comply with what they said they were going to do, and a lot of times they come in with a drawing or we help them do a drawing. Here's my property, here's my fence, here's my gate. and make them sign off on it, because eventually if they do something that was outside of the permit and the neighbor doesn't like it, or one of the neighbors don't like it, or it comes back later, there's a new property owner and it's in violation of what the ordinance was, then it gets stuck to the property owner, whether it's the new owner or the previous owner, to fix it, because they lied. I don't know. I don't even know if that holds up in court.
So you're suggesting for new installations, an $85 permit and an inspection, for maintenance, permit, to annotate that you've done the maintenance and you sign your life away that all of your maintenance has been done in accordance with the regulations of the city, and no inspection? I think if we're going to require a permit, I think there should be an inspection that goes along with it, and the city eats the cost of that.
All right.
So
Understanding it's not the city who's eating the cost of it, it's the rest of the taxpayers.
Yes, ma'am. Well, who are the city?
Right.
They are the city. The taxpayers
Right.
are the
I
city.
understand that. I just wanted to make sure that you weren't saying just this small collective people.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, I think we've heard from everyone on council. Let me weigh in a little bit on this, because we do have a motion and a second on the floor. We have to go to in a minute. I firmly, strongly believe we have to have permits. I think the fee for a new fence is good. I think the comments you guys have made about maintenance, I think that's important. I have two neighbors, and we share fences. And how are we gonna make a decision on what we're gonna do with those fences that we have right now? I've got two, we just did it recently with my two neighbors. One of us got the fence smooth side, one of us got the fence the other side, right? That's just the way it is, whatever one was doing the fence repair. I would like us to consider potentially not doing, keep the permits, charge the normal fee for the initial permit, and a lesser fee for maintenance. And that could be $25, $30, whatever. We've got to have something that's gonna compensate for what we do as an inspection process. That's my gut feel on that. And I think we've heard from everybody right now, so I need to call to the question that we need to move on the motion that's been made. Could you restate your motion, Phil, so everybody understands that?
Sure, the motion is to not, let's say it in plain English, is the fences not over 7 feet high do not require a permit. Putting that in the section 105.2.
Okay, that's been seconded by Councilmember Bulman. So that's the issue before us right now. So let's go ahead and let me call for that vote. Then call the question. We'll go from there and we'll see what happens. Okay.
Yes, sir. Councilmember Vaughan.
Aye.
Councilmember Bulman.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Goolsby.
Aye.
Councilmember Buck.
No.
Councilmember Fitzpatrick. No. Councilmember Najarian.
No.
Mayor.
That's 3-3.
Yes,
I will
sir.
vote no. Which means that particular motion has been defeated.
So,
That
Mayor,
does not kill the issue, though.
no, I was gonna say, maybe if you allow, give us a little more time to look at it based on the discussion that you had, we'll try to come up, I don't know how, somehow with a definition of maintenance, and then maybe propose, a permit or a reduced permit fee for fences, commensurate to the work that is
I
done.
think you've heard discussion from council that gives you some pretty good ideas of where you can go from there, right?
I think you're all over the board. I think you're all over the board.
There are issues that definitely related to that, but I think you've heard from all of us as to what our position may be on this. So, yes, let's take it back. This particular motion was defeated. That doesn't mean the issue's gone away. I would ask you to go ahead, continue to look at this and come back to us as soon as you can. Again, looking at that, some of the issues about the permit, how much of the maintenance side of it, and that's been the biggest complaint I think I heard from many of you that have visited in the last year or less, is that, I'm just doing simple maintenance on my fence. Why are you charging me $85? Okay, so, all right. Okay, everybody? We're good. Let's move on to tab F then. Discuss and to consider license agreement between the city and American Bank at 600 Packbrook Road.
1 second, making some notes. As you know, we have been working in the aviation district. The EDC has to purchase properties. Is this your number? To purchase some properties, and 2 of them are from Techstar Bank. Actually, it's 3 parcels. One of them looks like one. It's actually 2 parcels. But 3 parcels. So one of the issues they have is their signage. As you know, they took some signs down, some trees down to get their drive-through in so that we could purchase the ATM property, but now they're having an issue with the trees that are left on their property. So what they're basically asking is for a license agreement that allows them to take the smaller of the 2 signs, if you went down to look, and move it out a few feet and stick it in the city's right-of-way. And so what we have before you this evening is that license agreement. And the other issue that falls within that is, you know, we do put our Christmas decorations down there, holiday decorations. And there is a meter that we use to plug it in. Well, they're needing to use that for their sign. So what they are agreeing to do is they will have that meter turned over into their name, but we will have the right to use it at any time for any holiday decorations that we need. So that's what we have before us this evening.
Motion to approve.
Second. Okay, motion by Councilmember Bulman, second by Councilmember Najarian. Discussion. Ms. Goolsby.
Thank you, sir. That's not in the 30-foot triangle, right?
No, it is not in the 30-foot triangle. It is not in the CPS power line easement. It is not in the gas easement. It took us a long time to figure out that little box because there are a lot of things down there, but it's not in the visibility triangle.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I just have one question. How tall is the sign going to be? Do you know? It's just not in the packet, so I was just.
So I'm believing that the one that they have down there is 35 feet.
Yeah.
So they have a taller one, which I believe is 50 feet.
Okay.
That one they want to do away with. They want to bring the signs down, as most people will have to as the trees continue to grow. So it's the smaller of the 2 signs they have, and I believe it's 35 feet.
Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion? Mr. Buck?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Are there going to be any trees taken down in order to accommodate this sign?
No.
Hooray. Second question, are we going to have to reimburse them for any electricity that we use for our holiday decorations? They're going to give it to us for free? That needs to be the most decorative locations in all of Universal City. We need to put lights and flashing spinny things and ho ho ho. Okay.
Are you done, Mr. Buck?
And we'll send them a holiday thank you card. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Believe it or not, most people already think that they are putting the decorations out. We have to quite often. That's why we got the one down there for a while that Regina got down there that said Universal City. Some people that understood it was the city that was doing the Christmas decorations and not Textile Bank.
Okay, we have a motion to second. Any other discussion? Okay, call to the vote then, please.
Councilmember Bulman.
Aye.
Councilmember Najarian.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Goolsby.
Aye.
Councilmember Buck.
Aye.
Councilmember Fitzpatrick.
Aye.
Councilmember Vaughan.
Aye.
The motion passes. We move on now to tab number G. Again, we close tab number, no tab for future proceeding. Based on the union revenue rate. So tab G, discuss and to consider resolution 956-8-2023, resolution establishing code of conduct policy for elected and appointed officials.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I was originally going to put tab G and H together, but then I realized that tab G, when we went back and looked at it, actually goes to all boards and commissions, so I removed them. Although on tab H, a lot of the boards do follow the Robert's Rules of Orders, maybe not as strictly as council does, but I separated them, and then I thought maybe for discussion purposes, it might just be easier. So tab G and tab H was a request by City Council, so we've gone out and looked at others. Of course, our law firm was very good in providing copies of some from the cities that they represent as well. So tab G is the code of conduct, again, minimum professional standards for elected and appointed officials. And then tab H, which is the rules and procedures. It's a combination of a lot of documents that we already had in place, just kind of reiterated it right here, and then just left it up for council to decide what you want to do, because this all pertains to you.
Motion to postpone indefinitely.
Second.
Okay, hold on. We have a motion to postpone indefinitely by Councilman Bulman. Who seconded that?
Either one of us.
Okay, Councilman Bulman.
Councilman Buck.
Discussion.
Okay, so I guess the motion is to postpone indefinitely. I always like having just to postponed, right? 'Cause that means it can come back.
Basically, the postpone is that would be considered at a future meeting.
If somebody brings it back up.
I'm just trying to look, I'm not smart enough for indefinitely. That's the part that kills me.
Indefinitely, in other words. no-
We don't care when,
no-
but it can come back.
If somebody requests that it comes back.
Yeah, okay.
The council can do that, a citizen can do that.
It could, well, yeah, but I mean, I had some questions here, but stuff I can ask offline as far as conflict of interest
The
and things
motion
like
to
that.
postpone indefinitely is on the table and it's been seconded. It doesn't mean that you can't ask questions.
Okay, so I can still ask you my
Yeah,
question.
absolutely.
Okay, on number 11, conduct of public meetings, and it talks about if conflict of interest, at that point, if one of my clients is doing something and we're here or whatever, I need to step away. I need to give you an affidavit prior to that item being discussed.
Yes, this is actually state law. So I know there have been several instances with council members or people on other boards and commissions, maybe it was their neighbor or something of that, and they've always just said to us at the meeting, hey, there is a conflict of interest. And they've explained it to us and we just told them at that time, state there's a conflict of interest, and they leave the meeting, right? In this particular case, the only difference is that you fill out an affidavit and we keep it on file.
Are we going to have an affidavit available?
So the affidavit is actually attached to, it should have been attached to one of the documents. Hang on.
Okay, that's fine, that's fine.
It's the state's form.
Okay, the next thing is it says prior to. Again, sometimes I'm not smart enough to realize that, wow, that's actually has the ability to affect me. Councilmember Buck says, hey, Goolsby, that's going to affect your property. At that point, during that item, I didn't think it was going to do that, but somebody else called me to the carpet saying it is. It's already we're already discussing it. Is it too late to file that affidavit?
I think that you can step off the dais as you need to, and then we can go back and have you fill out the affidavit so we have it on record.
Okay, I just don't want to get in trouble.
We don't want you to get in trouble.
Okay, all right. I've got other questions, but if we're postponing, I'm good to go. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
We do have a motion and a second, and more discussion, Mr. Buck.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to express my reasons why I believe that the motion should be postponed. The great state of Texas has a pretty robust definition of what constitutes ethical behavior for city council members or all elected officials in general. Our amazing city has been getting along thus far for the last 63 years, 64, whatever, since our incorporation in 1960, we've gotten along pretty well from everything that I've been able to gather in my research. There's been some contentious city council meetings over the years. You may have seen some of them, Mr. Mayor. But I think in all instances, it's all been resolved. And I think that a robust discussion is different from violations of ethics or throwing out insults at a fellow council member, something like that. And it's always been resolved generally amicably between. Did you move away? If you saw the looks that were coming out of his face.
No, I got your point.
And I don't think that anything additional beyond what's already there that guides our behavior. I'd like to think that everybody up here on this dais is a mature, emotionally mature and responsible adult capable of, oh, there you go again.
Sorry, you said emotionally mature. I'm sorry.
Following all of the rules and statutes that govern the conduct of council members. And I think that if any of us perceive that we are not conducting ourselves in a manner that is consistent with the spirit of a responsible council member, I think it should be handled offline, and I think it would be handled offline. So I think this is an unnecessary additional regulation that in my opinion, we are already all complying with, generally speaking. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Mr. Fitzpatrick.
And I guess from my standpoint, I read this list and I don't think there's anything in there that superbly controversial that I would have a problem complying with. And I don't think it's a bad idea for us to really, one of the things that I see is when I went to a recent training for newly elected officials, they were talking about how social media has really changed the game, and they had council member responding to comments on live streaming during the meetings. And so they were like, had the live stream up on their iPad or whatever, and they were responding to comments from the community during the meeting. That never was an issue before. I mean, and it certainly hasn't been an issue now, but now we are live streaming. And so I do think that there's probably framework of rules or a code of conduct that isn't a bad thing. It's not anything that we're not already doing, but I don't think it's a bad idea to define what it is that we think is good for us to do. So.
Yes, Ms. Paul.
I think contrary to what she's saying is just that this was made up not by city council members. We didn't all make this up. This was made up by the city manager or city staff, and it's our city council, like we are the city council members. So if anyone's going to make a code of conduct, it should be on us as council members, not on the city. But to that point, everything you're saying is already covered by laws that are dictated by the state. So to impress that on all of your council members, board members, anything above that is superseding Texas state law, which I don't really think we need to do.
I'll weigh in. Staff had no intention of doing this. This is what you all asked for. Conduct and rules of procedures. I've seen them from cities that are all combined together. That's why I separated them. Again, I don't care if you pass it or not. I spent the time on it. It doesn't mean anything to me. And you're right, they're your rules. If you want to make up your own rules, then you're all welcome to do that. And we'll assist you in doing that. And you have to remember from the staff's perspective, none of us monitor council behavior. We're not hall monitors, we're not room monitors, we don't monitor your behavior. This is for all of you and for the other appointees that you make. I don't care if you have it, nobody on staff cares if you have it. This is what came out of the conversation that we had, so I just want to say, I don't care if you have it either.
Anybody else? Where are we at? Ms. Goolsby?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Do we anywhere state that we follow Robert's rules? I may have jumped on another council member earlier for interrupting, and that's because of the Robert's rules. I had the floor.
Yes, sir. In the 1987 memo, which also covered a little bit of conduct of city council, primarily it discussed how the meetings would be operated. It does say that we follow Robert's Rules of Orders. That's from your 1987 memo. That's not in this portion of it. Remember, I separated these two documents out and made them separately. When you get to tab H, yes, Robert's Rules of Order.
Okay, that's a memo. That's not, it is like attachment A, it's codified.
Well,
It's
the memo is
ordinances.
not, and this is a resolution. It becomes, remember, there's two kinds. An ordinance is when you're telling everybody outside of the city staff and city council on the way things need to be done. A resolution, which is what these two documents are for internal operations only. So if you want to set as your guide further within any document that it's Robert's Rules of Orders, you can. But if you're just going to operate off the 1987 memo, you don't have to do anything else. But again, even Robert's Rules of Orders,
Doesn't mention
in most
social media.
cities, you'll find that it is followed generally, unless you have a parliamentarian, and typically your city attorney is a parliamentarian. No, I know. Complicated, nobody wants to do it.
Denies that requirement.
Unless you have a true parliamentarian, rules, Robert's Rules of Orders are very loosely followed, whether it's on the city council, the EDC, the Parks and Rec Commission. They generally know the order in which things need to be done. And we've never had an issue with it.
I'm just trying to make sure that I'm righteous in my saying I have the floor.
You are. One of the things that we had discussed. One of the things that we had discussed with the mayor.
That is also up to the presiding officer to make that determination.
Right. And one of the things that we had discussed with the mayor, and remember that the presiding officer is not always the mayor, it's the mayor pro tem. It is the chair of the planning and zoning, is the vice chair. Every other board and commission has a first and a second. And Robert's Rules of Order applies to all boards and commissions. One of the things that we have looked at doing is purchasing some very watered down, simple brochures of Robert's Rules of Orders that you can generally look at. I mean, it's high school level. It says, this is how a meeting should proceed through Robert's Rules of Orders, and it's got a little 2-page fold out that says you move up the thing and you move down the thing. So we'll work on getting those. And again, it's not only for city council.
Hey, it's just if we don't have rules of conduct official, I can't be righteous in telling somebody I have the floor. That's all I'm going to say. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Remember, your righteousness is dependent upon all of you, not anybody else.
But they.
I think part of the frustration here is that the council member asks for an agenda item and then we're never consulted again on what they would like to be in that agenda item. We don't get the opportunity to put anything in there about what our agenda item is. And so we don't get an opportunity to be asked, well, what did you mean about this agenda item? The city just kind of runs with it. And I think that's where we were hoping to get with H is what would we as a council like our meetings to be run as? Do we want people to own an agenda item and be able to present on that agenda item, or do we want the city to take it and not let us have any input? That's what we were requesting with H. G was kind of code of conduct that I'm not sure where that came from, but I think your question about Robert's Rules of Order is where H goes. And that's where we would decide how do we want these meetings to go. Do we want it to be Robert's Rules of Order? Do we want you to have a bigger chair than the rest of us? And we can make that decision. So I don't think G is necessary, H is, and that's what we'd like to hash out. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So before us is the motion to postpone indefinitely. Tab G, we haven't got to H yet. This is the tab G indefinitely. Right. Any other discussion on that? All right. Let's call for that vote, please.
Councilmember Bulman.
Aye.
Councilmember Buck.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Goolsby.
Aye.
Councilmember Fitzpatrick.
Aye.
Councilmember Najarian.
Aye.
Councilmember Vaughan.
Aye.
Okay, that motion passes to tab H then, which is to discuss and consider Resolution 956B 2023, creating and establishing rules and procedures and providing for severability and an effective date. So this brings up just another opportunity for people to express their opinions and what they feel. Okay. I'll go ahead and entertain a motion, and then we'll go ahead and have discussion.
I move that we postpone this to September 5th meeting and allow us to provide edits to this policy. It's very important that we all are on the same page and we have an opportunity to provide input on it.
Second, that motion to postpone till the September 5th meeting. Second by Councilmember Najarian. Discussion. Goolsby.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. So I'm just making sure I've got this, I understand this. If I abstain, that ends up as a no vote. And if I recuse myself, that is now no longer 6 votes, it's 5 votes on this. Items, Rule 26.
So an abstention is a no vote according to our city charter, which is in this document. That's probably where you're reading it. That's from the city charter. Now you're asking for a recusal. I don't know about how recusal works. I'm guessing that falls under Robert's Rules of Order. Which one of you is the parliamentarian?
I thought it was our city attorney.
So if you had filed an extension under state law, then you are not, then that is considered different than if you simply say, after deliberation and discussion, well, I'm going to abstain. I think I've got a conflict, or I think I've got this. But if you've not filed and qualify under state law, then you're going to count as a no vote instead of not counting, period. That's the distinction.
But if I recuse myself early enough.
But what does recuse mean?
Well, if a member has a conflict of interest defined by Local Government Code, Chapter 176, the member shall file a conflict of disclosure affidavit stating that a nature or the extent of the
He's going back to could you tell us what bullet point that is, so that would be very helpful?
Rule 27?
27?
So maybe the term recusal is what's throwing you, it would be, it would be an extension. But that's under 26. But she just wanted to know the bullet points so they can scroll down. So we're gonna call, under these rules, we're gonna call an abstention, you don't have one that meets the state requirements. And then a recusal is you filed your state filed affidavit and you were not considered as counting towards the vote.
It's as if you already were present.
I'm sorry?
It's as if you were not present in the room.
Correct.
Is a recusal. An abstention is that you were here and you don't want to say yes or no, so you're abstaining, but by our charter, an abstention is a no vote.
Okay, you understand that we've had this back and forth argument since I got on council, and I was, I would hate to abstain because that meant a no vote, but I had a conflict of interest, so I didn't want that to be that guy. Because again, they hate me and they're going to vote.
The majority of the time, people know they have a conflict of interest before they ever get here.
Okay.
In that case, you would recuse yourself when the item came up.
That works for me. And then, you said you want us to throw out our things, but that wouldn't be in the open forum. So I have a couple of notes that I'm just throwing out. I'm sorry, I'm not supposed to. I'm going to go ahead and throw out a few of my stones. We talked on here on their. This is it was revised 3rd of June, 1987. This is the personnel memo.
Yes, that's the one you're currently operating under.
Okay, item 1, number 3. Or item B, item 1B3.
1B3, okay.
It says council appoints a city attorney who must maintain their practice and offices in the city.
Mm-hmm.
Are we following that?
Yep.
Y'all have an office here?
She has an office here. She comes in and offices here. They do it at every place they go to.
Okay. I just didn't know if we just needed to nix that so I didn't have to do anything like that, or
So
if
the
that's
question
state
is,
code.
what is an office? And so we've had this discussion before. We even went with Denton Navarro, Jahia Bernal, and Zach. What does it mean to have an office? The indication that they gave to city council is that, yes, the attorney can come here and have consultation with staff, which Megan usually does before every meeting, and that constitutes having an office, because it's impossible, if you think about a very remote city, they're probably using an attorney from somewhere else. I'm assuming that even Denton Navarro, Jahia Bernal, and Zach, some of them probably travel a good 2 hours to get to their city staff and council meetings.
Okay, just because at this point, if we needed to, I was happy to strike that because I like our city attorney. I think they do a great job.
There are some provisions of this memo that are no longer in conformance with state law, but we were not following those, such as 6, which identifies that supplemental expenditures of an emergency nature may be approved by a telephone call.
So we should probably wipe that off in this discussion.
Well, the resolution that you have before you, whatever form you decided in, it has the legalese in there that basically is wiping everything that's in the past out. Meaning, council memo number P-C 3-C1.
Oh, that's taking this whole thing out. Oh, I'll be quiet. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
So the motion is to postpone it till the 5th. Do you want to postpone it and bring it back up as an action item or a discussion item?
Yes, action item.
Action item. Okay. Just want to make sure we clarify that.
And you should still second that.
Okay. All right. So I want to make sure everybody's clear. Yes, Ms. Bulman.
I'm going to pass something out if that's okay, just so everyone can look at this between now and when we get back to this on September 5th, if that's okay. Thanks, guys. And it's just regarding, can you leave me one of those? I always do this. It's just regarding, it's regarding Rule 8, So it's just showing you guys so that you guys can do your research and you guys can look into it between now and September 5th if you don't want to take my word for it. But I've already done a slideshow presentation on how other city councils operate around us from smaller to bigger and how they have people put something on the council members specifically, how they can put things on the agenda. So it's just something, it's homework for you, I guess, that you guys can just look over and see how all the cities do it and what size those cities are, and then what ours says, because that's something I would ideally like to change. But like I said, this is just, I'm gonna pass it out now so you guys have 2 weeks to digest it, or, well, I guess a month until the next meeting. That's it.
All right, yes, Mr. Bud.
So I want to make sure I understand this. If it's going to come back on the 5th of September as an action item, that means we would vote on it. So should we have the discussion now about how we want the proposed resolution to look on September 5th? Because otherwise there's going to be potentially so many changes, massages to it based on input from the various council members that we might not be able to keep track of all of these changes. I propose that during the discussion right now, Mr. Mayor, pending the vote, that we work out some of these items so that everybody can come to some sort of conclusion and the city staff has a better idea of how the resolution should look so that they can present it to us in pretty clean language on the 5th of September. To that end, I have some rules that I would like to see a little bit extra put in there or a little bit taken out. In rule number 4 specifically, it is in there that the mayor, if there is insufficient business on the agenda, that the mayor can postpone the meeting. I have no problem with that. However, how long would we go potentially before we get into a part where I'm a little bit ineloquent here and I apologize. The city may not have any business, the mayor may not have any business, but some of the council members might have business that they wish to bring up with their fellow council members. So can we come up with a minimum amount of, or a maximum number of meetings that we would go to be canceled due to lack of city business, and set like, we must meet at least once every other month. We must meet at least once per month, so that gives the council members an opportunity to bring up any concerns that they might have that we couldn't bring up otherwise because we can't discuss the city business outside of this open meeting. Could we agree that we must have a meeting at least every 60 days? Yes, ma'am.
If I might, I believe our charter already says that we have to have at least one meeting a month.
Very
We're
well.
looking that up right now.
Good.
Again, remember, this is a polling through of a lot of documents.
Yes, ma'am.
And I can't repeat the entire charter in here. I can't repeat the entire rules of order, so.
I thought that was a requirement to be the city manager. You have to have it memorized.
No.
Let's see, Rule 6 talks about who must be present at the executive sessions, I believe. And I'm sorry, I have my notes here in front of me. I don't have the actual rules, but at a minimum, the city clerk or their qualified designee and city attorney must be present to appropriately record minutes and ensure compliance with all legal requirements. That is also in our charter, I believe. For Rule 6, I believe that talks about executive sessions potentially.
Rule 6 does talk about executive sessions, and typically it is only those that are required to be in there. Your city clerk is in there is because she's doing, what do you call those? Certified minutes. So the city clerk is always in the meeting. If it's a consultation with the attorney, then the attorney is in the meeting. But you have the ability to invite your attorney to any meeting because you're in executive session. If it's with a staff member who has done a negotiation or a land deal, you can call that person in there. We've had executive sessions where the actual developer themselves have been present. So it's kind of an as need is. What you don't want is people that don't have any interest in whatever the topic of discussion is being in the room.
Right, can you think?
You can waive that right by inviting people even who are not necessarily necessarily necessary or in alignment with your position. So you can run that risk of waiving that privilege.
Can you think of a situation where we would not want to have our city attorney present in our executive sessions?
When you're talking about the city attorney?
Personnel, city attorney's not necessarily required for personnel reviews.
Okay.
City attorney's not necessarily required for real estate transactions. If you've got a broker or something like that that you are working with, it's at the discretion of council.
Good. I just wanted to clarify, like, would there be, is that something, should we determine that the city attorney should be in there? For rule number 8, which deals, I believe, with items for the agenda, I would like to see, as Councilmember Vaughan pointed out, that if a council member requests to place an item on the agenda and receives the concurrence from the quorum, from at least 3 of their fellow council members, that council member be allowed to open the discussion of that agenda item. Because, for instance, if a council member wishes to present a particular position, I think that council member who has requested the agenda item be placed on the agenda, that has requested that item be placed on the agenda, should have the opportunity to make their position and explain why they wanted it on the agenda before any other discussion. Does anybody have any issue with adding that into the language of that rule? Yes, I'll repeat it again. Let's say I requested an item be added to the agenda for a future meeting, and I received concurrence from 3 of my fellow council members, and it's going to come up on the next agenda item. I, as the person who requested the item for the agenda, would like to be able to open the discussion rather than a presentation by the city staff or by the attorneys or by whomever. I would like to have the opportunity to make my position made clear and explain why I wish to have this item on the agenda. Can I have a show of hands? Is everybody okay with that?
Well, can I clarify?
I don't mind having a back and forth discussion, Mr. Mayor, if that's permissible with you.
Let Ms. Bulman talk.
Can I have a clarifying though?
Sure.
I don't like the first part of your sentence. I'm okay with what you want to do. I don't agree with your first part of the sentence though. So I don't agree. The packet that I passed out, every single other city around us doesn't need a concurrence from their fellow council members to put something on the agenda.
That's different.
So, so I'm okay with yours. I'm just not okay with the first half that you're saying, but I'm okay with your second half.
Okay. Okay, so then how about if I, as a council member, receive sufficient concurrence to have an item placed on the agenda, I would like to be the person that opens up the discussion on that agenda item.
So point of clarification.
Yes, ma'am.
So the mayor would read whatever the agenda item was, and then he would call upon whichever member asked for it to be on the agenda to go ahead and speak.
Mm-hmm. Yes, the mayor says, okay, let's move on to tab number G, whatever. It's a discussion or an action item that was requested by Councilmember Buck to discuss the following ... Okay, I'll turn it over to Councilmember Buck for your opening remarks.
Right. Here's the only thing that you'll need to be careful of is a lot of times you'll have somebody may bring it up, then the general discussion will happen, and then somebody will say, well, do we want to have this on the next agenda? And then they say yes. Well, maybe the person who asked for it to be on the next agenda wasn't the person who originally brought it up. So how would you want us to handle that situation?
I think the person who, most specifically, I was discussing in council member comments at the end, when I say fellow council members, I wish to bring up a new item of business at a future meeting, right? And I'll use the example, my discussion of the venue tax reallocation that I requested the other day, right? We had the discussion, I had my opening, and this is, I'm not trying to throw rocks here, okay? Mr. Mayor read the opening remarks and then said, okay, I'll turn it over to the city staff for a presentation about the reallocation of the venue tax. And I went, I have my opening statement that I'd like to make here about why I requested this item to be placed. And specifically, again, not trying to throw rocks, your presentation to the council was counter to what I wanted to achieve. So I would have liked to have that opportunity to make my opening remarks to my fellow council members before the city staff makes their presentation. So for new business items, let's say, new business items that are being added to the agenda, the council member who is requesting it be placed on the agenda has the floor at the beginning. Good. Back to my notes. Forgive me, I did a lot of research on this. Rule number 9. The agenda packet towards the end says that they own. Where was it? The act is oh, sorry, I was reading the wrong one. There we go. The last sentence. Council members may provide supportive documents to any agenda items that they own to the city clerk's office in accordance with the packet preparation schedule. I don't own a lot of the things that I hand out, but it's publicly available.
You're reinterpreting the word of own, so it goes back to the comment that you just made. Mr. Mayor, I request with concurrence of my council members that this item be on discussion for whenever, and then you get the concurrence. You own that topic. So if it's going to be on the agenda on a certain day, if you want.
Okay, I get it. They own the agenda item, not the items that they're passing out. Got it. Sorry, thank you. I misinterpreted that. I see that. I see the error of my ways. In rule number 15, we talk about public comments. Specifically in subparagraph number 4, I think. If a resident has comments about a specific agenda item, may they request at the beginning during citizens to be heard to postpone their comments to immediately before that agenda item? Or must the resident only speak to all agenda items, even if they're coming later on in the meeting? Must they speak during citizens to be heard? For instance, if somebody wanted to talk about these rules of procedures, could they tonight have signed up to speak and said, I wish to speak directly before tab H? Or must they limit their comments to the period designated at the beginning of our meetings to citizens to be heard?
No, they don't have to.
Okay, so they can request to be heard immediately prior to that agenda item. Good. And in that
It's
case,
usually the mayor that makes the determination
I
on
can make
that as
that
the presiding officer. He has done that.
Which
So
we've
what
done
you
many
have,
times.
right, what you have to be careful is that you do not get in conflict with your ordinance number 657, rules of decorum, that's to the public, and that they are then, in fact, some people are not getting 6 minutes at a meeting or 9 minutes at a meeting where somebody else is only getting 3, so you're gonna have to be, somebody's gonna have to be aware of their time.
yes, and I believe
3
that
minutes.
the total amount of comments a resident or citizen can make is limited to a total of 3 minutes during the meeting. So they can't talk for 3 minutes about tab B and then for 3 minutes at tab G and then 3 minutes at tab H. Total of 3 minutes throughout the entirety of the meeting.
Yes.
I'm sorry, what, Kristen?
Unless it's in a public hearing.
Unless it's a public hearing, yes, sorry. Yes, I should have clarified that. Good. Last thing I have is you have 2 rule number 31s.
So I said, I think I have some numbering that went wrong.
Might have, there's some,
Is that last one, there's no 7, lucky number 7 is gone? And 31?
council action to withdraw or defer, and then public participation during council meetings. They're both listed as Rule 31. It's a small thing. Other than that was all. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Can I ask a question / make a suggestion? So since you've got your list of stuff, I've got my list of stuff, likely council members have their own list of stuff. Is it okay, Ms. Turner, if all of us were to go through, those of us who want to go through this document, red line and change what we want, could we present that in this next upcoming agenda packet? That way all of our council members could see these are the changes Ashton wants to make, these are the changes Buck wants to make, these are the changes Phil wants to make. And then it might make this meeting not be so treacherous, so that each of us kind of already knows ahead of time where they're at. Are we allowed to do that? Would that
Sure,
be a
you can do
possibility?
that, and I don't have an issue with that, but don't ask me to rectify your conversations. In other words, you're not asking me to take all of that and put it in one document, or to
No.
go back and take your comments and try to come up with a document.
No.
I don't want to get between the council members.
We would have to completely do it ourselves and then put it in the agenda pack, but we would have to go through this document, copy and paste it ourselves, change our things, redline it, do all the work, make it super pretty for you. That way, our other council members can clearly see what we would like to change. That way, when we go through them like this, everybody kind of knows where everyone is visually, because I think this might get kind of hard to pick through each one of these, because you just had a bunch, but I've got a bunch. I know other people might have some too. So I was just saying, is that possible? That way you guys can see it all ahead of time and you don't have to do this.
So, I'm sorry,
Yes, Mr.
clarification, so we would have 7 individual red line documents that would be attached to the agenda so that we could see everybody's.
Yes.
And maybe we could have them back-to-back pages so that like they kind of all flow. You know what I'm saying? Like page 1, all 7 of them. Page 2, all 7. Because I would hate to have to go through one document altogether and then have, it would be nice. We're going to compare it to.
I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
I'm not opposed. Yeah, I was just trying to make it like a little bit easier so everybody kind of didn't have to write down like, oh, we want to change A, but to this, to that. Then you would know like this is what they want for A, this is what they want, and then you could kind of pick your vote, I guess. Like decide what you like. I don't know.
Megan, that's a thought.
Uh-oh.
Just the caveat that, as with all agenda packets, so if we're providing all 7 members information, and we're gonna have meet and greet, we're gonna go through the packet, just be mindful that your discussions and conversations regarding everyone else's comments outside of a published open meeting could subject you to a challenge or a question of whether or not, you're violating
A rolling quorum. A long quorum.
Because you already have the opinion of all the other council members, and then you discuss it with another council member. She's saying if you have your combined meet and greets, then you are really, really edging on that line. Not discussing it in an open meeting or a discussion at an open meeting, because you already have the opinion of all your fellow officers.
To that end, what if we just got it as a handout that night? Like, you give us this in our agenda as it is, or if you make any modifications now based on any conversation, I don't know. But then we'll turn in our red line documents to you, but we don't see anybody else's until we get here that evening, but we'll have them as a packet so we can go through it during the meeting as a reference. Just as a way to not be getting so close to that issue.
Well, then the question begs this. I'm just going to ask because it's a little bit open-ended. Are you going to do this with every item, or are you just going to do it with this one? Because if you're going to do this with every item, then there's no sense of your staff giving you a working document to start from. We just hand everything over to you in the committee, and then you write everything. Or do you really want just on this one issue? I'm asking because you're setting a separate precedence. If you want to do stuff by committee, then we'll set up workshops for you, and you can do things by committee, and you can give us what you want, and then we'll go back and do the legal check on it.
Well, for me, I think because this is literally the rules and procedures for city council, I think it's a little bit different than another document. I just think because it's specific to city council, like, so for me, I feel like it just should be, it should have a lot of city council input since it's the rules and procedures for city council. That's my, not for everything, but I just feel like this very specifically is just, it's labeled city council rules and procedures. So that's it.
Okay, Mr. Vaughan?
I think your idea is a good one. That way we don't have to have it all out there before, and then I think at the meeting we can have all 6 lined up, and then we can take votes on each edit.
And so then I will just ask, because as Kim said, I mean, she has compiled this from multiple sources, both state law, charter, and current ordinances. So when we get to a final draft, it may not be something that legally we can sign off on at that meeting. We might need another meeting to take that document back then and ensure that it's in conformance with your rules and regulations. So I would appreciate that patience if I ask for that.
Would that be better than to have it as a discussion rather than an action item then?
No,
We could all
we do
share that.
both, and if it's not
You can do
legally
both?
sound, we postpone the action.
Okay.
Or perhaps we say, we're approving this as a council pending legal review, and then you bring it back to us if it
You can do that too.
edited.
Sure. Okay, well, thank you.
Yes, Mr. Turner.
As you know, we have a lot of big agenda items. We're here until 9:30, not that I mind, but I know that some of you have work tomorrow as well. We do have several big agendas coming up. So my recommendation is, I know that some of you have your meet and greets on the weekends. Maybe instead of, so we don't run into the chance that we could have the quorum, maybe if I send them to you on Monday morning, that way you have time on Monday and Tuesday to look at it and then can absorb it a little bit more. It is very daunting to see, 6 different opinions on a document all at one time.
But that would be fine with me.
Okay, you get thumbs up.
Thank you.
You got a thumbs up.
Give me.
Okay.
All right.
But I think we've built this one pretty well. As far as discussion, I know everybody's going to have the opportunity for their own input for the next council meeting. So I think that it's fairly clear. What we're going to do is we're going to massage these and get put our own little packet together. It'll be made available to each of us before that next council meeting. Not 2 days, 3 days for that evening. Okay, all right. All right. Yes, Paul?
We still have a motion and a second.
To postpone?
Postpone to September 5th.
Yes, the motion is postponed until September 5th council meeting. Yeah. All right. Any other discussion? All right, call for vote, please.
Councilmember Vaughan.
Aye.
Councilmember Najarian.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Goolsby.
Aye.
Councilmember Bug.
Aye.
Councilmember Bulman.
Aye.
Councilmember Fitzpatrick.
Aye.
Okay, that motion passes. That concludes our business for this evening. So turn it over to our city manager for her comments.
I just have a couple of comments. Thank you, everybody who came to the ribbon cutting that we had this last week on Friday, and remind you that on August 11th, we do have another ribbon cutting at Veterans Park. That is at 10 a.m. before it gets hot. Thank you very much. And we are also planning our 9/11 memorial service, which will be at 9/11 at 9, and that'll be at Red Horse Park. And this weekend is the last movie in the park, Minions, Saturday. Oh, dark 30.
Thank you. Mrs. Patrick.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear we're doing the 9/11 memorial thing. I'd like to encourage everybody to show up from council, as Bev Foley was the reason why that came into being. And I think it would be a really nice way to remember her service to the community in a really positive way. And I wanted to thank everybody who came out to Parks Partners Casino Night. We ended up raising over $18,000, which I think will go a long way towards a shade structure at the new parks, which I've heard needs to happen because they're so blazing hot. People cannot utilize the park structure. And please rain. And really, I just have been learning so much, and I really appreciate the opportunity to go to trainings and learn more about the municipality rules and regulations and how to best serve the community. So just know that there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes, behind these meetings, where we are trying to educate ourselves so that we can provide better answers in these meetings. So just wanted you guys to know that we do take the time to do those. Thank you.
Phil?
Nothing from you, not here.
Paul?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I totally agree. Getting everybody out there on 9/11 is very important. And just a real quick one, everybody that went to Hog Wild, that was, our attorneys put this on every year. the firm and have many different discussions on things that have to do with cities, give you an update on what's going on in Austin, and just like Councilmember Fitzpatrick said, it's, things we do behind it to better educate ourselves on upcoming issues. Even our own team had a presentation that, as you read it on the agenda, seemed very boring, but she was able to make it very entertaining, and with that said,
Good times.
good times. Thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
I just want to thank you, Kim, for putting together the rules and procedures. I know I asked for them in May, and I know it was a ton of work, and I'm sorry that we're being picky, but I think it's really important, and I think as a new council member, it's just really good to know what those rules and procedures are and how we can do things and how we can better all work together and have it all written out in black and white. So I know it's a ton of work, and I know that's a bummer, but I just wanted to thank you for, putting it on the agenda and letting us, go through all this. So, thank you. That's it.
Excuse me.
Yeah. A lot of work, thank you very much. A lot of great discussion, thank y'all. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Buck?
I would like to thank the youngsters. Unfortunately, I don't remember their names from the very beginning of our council meeting tonight. Just in case they happen to look at the recording here, thank you very much for raising that money for our animal shelter. We certainly appreciate it, as well as to John Heberling and his group of students that performed all those community service hours. I fully concur with you, Mr. Mayor, that those are the future leaders of our community, and they are to be recognized and commended for everything that they did. Also, I'd like to thank my fellow council members, actually, and the mayor and the city staff for the robust discussion tonight. Nobody raised their voices. Everybody was happy, and the discussions were civil and productive. I thank everybody for that, as well as to the city staff for putting this all together. I know how much work goes into this, and to all the residents who have come out this evening to watch the proceedings and sticking around until 9:30. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, we just have a couple items. One is on a somber note. I think many of you knew the First Lady of Universal City, who was the mayor, Carmen Squires, passed away last week. The services are still pending. We don't know when it's going to take place, but Carmen was the first woman to serve on council and the only woman that's been mayor of Universal City. Great friend. I've known her for many years, and she'll be missed. In fact, we all missed her at the casino night because she loves to play hold'em poker, and she was also a master bridge player. I know they have ratings for bridge people too. So, and at the Cimarron Park, it was very nice, a really nice park. Commissioner Calvert, our precinct commissioner, was there as well, and my little grandson helped me cut the ribbon. It was kind of cool. So, but the one coming up on the 11th, I ask everybody, please try to attend it if you can. Should be a beautiful event. I think we'll see the commissioner there as well. You heard all about the airplane and part of the park. So, have you seen a visual of it, of the aircraft? Have you seen a visual of it? It's really cool. It's really cool. So anyway, that'll be on the 11th. And so that's all I have this evening. Again, robust discussion, very positive. I really appreciate what everybody's doing in this council, because you guys come really, and I mean guys generically, come really well prepared. So thank you very much. Thank you all for sticking it out this evening. Really appreciate your attendance. It is 9:32, and I'll call this meeting now adjourned.
Yeah.